I'm actually pondering at the same time this question: what would it mean if I were no longer black? Because I ask when people call up without melanin, the first thing they have to let us know is that they're
Is that they're
white.
white?
I'm yeah, I'm a white man from so and so, and I get it
Yeah.
because they want in their minds, I guess, they want us to know that they're white and they're listening, and so they want to make that distinction. It makes no difference to me, by the way.
Right.
Calling up, if you're calling to engage in conversation, I don't care what color you are, what color you identify as. I want to have dialogue, that
Right.
helps us move the needle. But they always do that. And then I say, define that. What does that mean? What does it mean to be white? And then I get,
Mm.
stutters and stuff. Well, what does it
Right.
mean to be black? I've gotten that. And I'm like, well, it's a juxtaposition to whiteness. There's no black without white. And I'm perfectly okay with not being black. You know what I'm saying? Even
Right.
though to me it's now a power structure. It's now a way of being that kind of brings us all together under one tent. But now it's a fight, because the black folk that if you're not from here, foundationally, you're not really black. If you're from another country, you're not really
Right.
black.
Right.
African American was something Jesse Jackson came up with, and we just adopted it. A lot of people don't want to be African American because I'm not from
Right.
Africa. I don't even know nobody in Africa. I'm not
Yeah.
that. I'm not the color black. We should call ourselves something else. Listen, I'm here for all of it. Let's talk about it. 866-801-8255. And I still don't believe Juneteenth should be a federal holiday. Period. That said,
Right.
go ahead.
I was going to say before, like the idea of blackness, like John Jennings, who we were talking about earlier, told me once. He said, black people were designed into existence, right? We were designed into existence as a commodity, right, to be
Right.
traded. And to be true, we all have to be the same thing. And like this idea about this monolithic black culture, which anybody who spent time in the South when they were a kid versus the North, like if you had family in New York and you lived in Southwestern Virginia and you went up there, that was a different culture. That was not the same culture. There was a Venn diagram of oppression that linked us all together. But the food we ate, the way we cooked the food, there would be some things that would be the same, but it wasn't a one-to-one thing. And I think that in and of itself explains the idea that black people aren't monolithic, right?
All right,
We
hold
are
on. Sugar on the grits. Sugar on the grits.
sugar or
Sugar
spice.
on.
Nah.
Y'all
I
doing
did
sugar,
both. I
Joe?
did both. I did both when I
See,
was a kid.
Nah,
yeah,
it's a
that
nah for
that could
me.
cause fights right there. Sugar
Yeah.
Right?
on the
Yeah.
grits.
Sugar
But
on the grits. That's a fight, right? But that's the thing, right? Like black culture is not monolithic, right?
right.
Black people are not monolithic. And the thing that I always found really interesting in going back to Virginia when I was a kid is going to the little country stores in the middle of nowhere, and there'd be a black man sitting on a milk carton and a white man sitting on a milk carton, and they would be very similar people until you start bringing up stuff about race, and then they were
Right.
completely different people, right? And I
Right.
think that idea that like as long as we consider I mean, it's hard to say we can separate ourselves from the racial construct. I think it's important for white people to do it first. I think they need to
Yeah.
relinquish whiteness before we can relinquish blackness. Because if they, that's what the Candace Owens of the world wants us to stop talking about, right? She wants us to stop talking about race and stop being black so that we can be nationalists with her. And I'm like, you need to stop. You need to get those people to, because theirs is the problem. There's nobody's ever. Blackness has never like created an oppressive system. Blackness has never. Nobody's ever called. I call people moon crickets online all the time. Nobody's ever carved a moon cricket into somebody's chest and hung them from a tree, right? None of
Right.
that stuff is even when you take the most black nationalist group, which is the Nation of Islam. They
No, they're not the most.
wait a
Don't
minute,
do that.
but I'm just
Don't do
saying,
that on
like,
these on
but
Aretha Franklin's airwaves today.
but
Not
but I'm
today.
saying I'm just using it as a talking point, right? Because I don't think they were extreme, but that's what people have in their head. They think those are the people that are the opposite of the KKK, and they did not
Not.
want to subjugate white people. They just wanted to get away from them, right?
Right.
And so when you take these sort of things and you put them in there, I think it's important for white people to relinquish whiteness before black people can relinquish blackness, because whiteness only exists in opposition. Black people are the true e pluribus unum. Like we out of many one.
Ooh.
Right. I think that when we ask and Karen, we talked about this before when we were talking about the concept of blackness as it translates to pre-colonialism, well, before the African American existed. And people will say, well, how could these Africans enslave Africans? How could black people enslave black people or sell black people to Europeans? Well, they weren't black people selling black people to Europeans because that concept didn't exist there at the time. there were rival nations. There were, so-called tribes, depending on which idea you subscribe to. But I didn't have a moral problem being Aruba and doing this to another person that I had beef with. For thousands of years, we've done this. There's been slavery or some form of human bondage across the globe. Those people did not subscribe to a concept of them being under one umbrella until an outside entity came and created that idea. So retroactively, we're looking back at people and now retroactively blackening everybody and saying that it was a black on black thing. But at the time that it happened, they did not see themselves as one monolithic group. And so that's the thing that's important, is being able to identify that in real time and being able to say that we may not be, well, I'm gonna go a step further. I think it's even further than exploring the idea of what do we call ourselves, like as a group, what do we call ourselves? If you think about it, the idea of collectivism and community and why we adhere to it so strongly is because it's in reaction, it's in response to a thing. It's in response to conditions to which we were subjected. It's in response to there being like strength in numbers. But what would happen, and again, we would need white folks to take the initiative and dismantle the white power structure first in order for this theoretically to even work. What would happen if we saw ourselves as individuals who were a part of a collective organically? So there are times when I move into the neighborhood that I'm living in now, okay? If I get to know my neighbor, I see that, he hasn't put his trash to the curb. He's an old guy. Maybe he was, sick a little bit. I go get his trash can. I put it on the curb for him. No problem. We start doing each other favors. This person is in need for that. But nobody ever said, all of y'all are going to act this way or everybody's going to do this thing. We start having collective interests with one another and we invest into the ideas that can help improve one another. But it's more organic. It's not because you have to do it. Because when you're forced by outside entities to do a thing with people you don't even get down like that with. So you are told you got to go back to the hood. You got to go back to do this. You got to go do it. And you didn't even mess with them people when you were there the first time. and so now you're being told that you have to do these things. But what happens if instead we start looking at each other as Joel and Karen and son, and what do we have in common? We just talked a second ago about, when you showed your book, I said, oh, my nephew might really dig that. And you say, well, we'll work that out, get your nephew a book. You said, well, okay, well, I wish you were here when you were working on the book because I needed somebody to translate some Gullah. Boom, if I was here, I would have done that. Here we are. Karen, you and I have our connections. Like, even now is just on Chasing Flavor with Carla Hall. Carla was on your show. You see, so if your name comes up, we both have amicable feelings about you. It's a network that's happening organically. Nobody's making us do this. But that's the thing, is we look at individualism and collectivism as collectivism is for us, individualism is for them, and it's the anti-community thing. You're just selfish. You greedy, you stingy, you looking out for yourself. But sometimes, and let's look through history, most of these movements, most change, most shifts in the social zeitgeist didn't come because everybody agreed at the same time. Somebody had to be the crash test dummy.
Right.
Somebody had to bite the bullet, sometimes literally.
Every Martin Luther King Day, I have to remind people that he had a 68% disapproval rating. 60+% disapproval. Black people weren't messing with him because he was bringing too much heat to the block. Like it was making life difficult, making white people mad. They wanted him to sat down somewhere. They did not want him doing all of this stuff, agitating these crazy, murderous, cantankerous, horrible, evil white folk who would lynch you at the drop of a hat. So he was not welcomed in a lot of Black communities as well. And the white power structure saw him as a problem because he was talking about Vietnam and bringing poor white people into the fold. Right. You got to go. Right. So he was not popular.
Fred Hampton, Same with Fred Hampton.
Not popular. So I mean, I asked this question because I think at the crux of everything that we're fighting for here, somebody just tweeted, how do you let an asexual person who's never been married make decisions about what you're going to do with your body? I guess they're talking about the Pope, but like at every turn we got somebody telling us stuff, that we can and cannot do. And then we got the government, and everybody's out there with an opinion. We started the conversation with our brother Joel talking about the lack of depth of knowledge that people have, but everybody has a strong opinion rooted in absolutely nothing but a YouTube clip or something that they read on a pamphlet on the back of, a cereal box. I don't know where they're getting the information, but it's frustrating. And the percentage of people who know things is dwindling.
But do you find that there's an anti-intellectual push?
Yes, we're in idiocracy.
It's almost like people are proud of not knowing stuff and trying to go back to the days of stuffing you in your locker, like you're the know-it-all nerd. Like they're gonna, break your glasses and stuff you in a locker because you know stuff. Only difference is like the nerds these days, I guess, is Revenge of the Nerds, because I wish somebody would try to stuff me. I wish you would stuff me in the locker, bruh. But I think that there's also this celebration of ignorance, in a sense that we're looking for confirmation bias, the thing that confirms what we already believe. So when somebody says, "Oh, I researched that," no, you didn't. You had an idea and you went looking for information that would confirm the thing that you think. If you found something that disagreed with it, you just set that to the side and kept on digging until you found a second opinion that affirmed your way of thinking. And so now with me, and I found, if you're on social media, one thing that I will say about social media, especially if you have like a broad enough platform that you engage with, you have a broad sample of human behavior. People want to believe that the way that they behave online is just like a persona. That's not who they really are, but it is. And there was a study that was done years ago when SUVs got popular, and they were saying that these people who drive these SUVs are even more aggressive than when they were in a smaller car. Like the driving and cutting people off, and their demeanor and the road rage. And the bigger, the more powerful the car, the more they started the driver exuded the characteristics of the car. And in a sense, social media is like that type of vehicle, where you get on there, you have some degree of anonymity, some degree of power. You can even block someone. You can even report their thing, try to get them deleted. Like you have a way of touching people from a distance in a way that you probably wouldn't dare in person. And so you get to see that side of how Black people actually fractured in this environment. And I'm not so sure how accurate it is anymore, because the attitudes that we're going to have to reconcile how accurate it is, because the attitudes to hear, if I'm an alien from outer space and I say, okay, clearly Black men and women hate each other. These groups of people don't like these groups of people, like, women, LGBTQI plus people aren't a part of the Black community, because every time issues with them come up, people say you're distracting from Black community issues. So, then who's the community? If those things that are part of the community are distractions from it, Black ain't enough. If you're ADOS, or which, listen, I know what I'm about to say is probably not going to be popular, and y'all already know. You can come for me and say it, but ADOS, in many instances, it behaves like Black MAGA. When I see a U.S. flag next to somebody's username online, I know what they're about to say is probably going to be some mess. Some bovine excrement.
But let me just say, I'm not and yes, all of that. Dr. Summer Show is here. Joel Christian Gill is here. Both professors, both teach in Massachusetts, both historians, both artists, which is powerful, because I think we need to be all things. But I feel like people are trying to find their sense of power. So to your point,
right, yes,
that's all MAGA is, right? It is the desire because you feel powerless, right? So the people that will follow that movement, you want to otherize other people because that puts you at the top of the food chain. So I'm not like that person that came here. I'm original. I'm 5 generations on both sides, okay? So I'm absolutely the person that should be getting some reparations. At the same time, everybody that came in from wherever they came in, hell, we owe our freedom to Haiti if you really want to go there, right? So like, we don't have I don't think we have the luxury to discard anybody. If everybody's going to be down, y'all's hero Malcolm X, his mama was not from here. So let's go. Marcus Garvey, who people quote, was not from here. We cannot continue to have this kind of discourse and think that it's going to take us to the reparations that everyone believes we deserve, which we do. But I feel like, Dr. Sun, for them, they found a thing that has a movement, that has followers, it's commerce, right? Because
Right.
now you're making money and on the YouTubes and stuff. Are
Mm-hmm.
you willing to walk away from something even if it's wrong in that moment? I feel like we have a lot of wrong moments that people will not walk
Right.
back because there's too much money
But
being
you know,
made
the
in it.
the key difference between MAGA and these movements that are like MAGA adjacent in the Black community is MAGA, they understand the concept of like the power of whiteness. They know how whiteness works. And so they will still claim their Irish heritage. They will still claim their English heritage. Oh, I'm part German, part this. They'll still claim all of that. And they'll
Right.
Americanize everything. Instead of doing it the other way around, they'll just Americanize everything. They'll act like Jesus was an American Republican. They'll Americanize everything and hold on to those roots. Whereas we just start to shrink ourselves and shrink ourselves. Like you, my family goes back. But then when some people who are in this movement hear me use my accent, then they say, oh, you must be Caribbean. You must be African. What's your ethnicity, brother? Where you from? If you ain't already know that this is where we had talked originally before we started code switching into the white man tongue, what is your movement based on? Do you really think that you actually sounded like that when you hopped off the boat? Where do you think you got that from? So when you start to hear someone speak who talk more like your ancestor than talk, that to you is suspicious, brother? That's not it. That's not it. I mean, we ain't storming. First of all, let me just be clear. I'm not suggesting we should storm any Capitol buildings, but I'm saying we're not storming Capitol buildings. We'll burn down a CVS and do whatever. And a lot of times, a lot of that agitation and destruction and chaos was actually done by outside agitators. We didn't actually do that in many instances. But they are about that. MAGA's about that. They're buffered with white privilege and the belief that they can get away with it, whereas we are having an identity crisis and taking it out on one another.
Yes.
And they've been told this, which I think is really interesting because they've been told this as a way to separate the poor people. Like one of the things that people misunderstand about Dr. King, Angela Davis said this, is that I don't think we realize the effectiveness of the Poor People's Campaign, right? About how like that was going to unite people. And when you start looking at this goes back to Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion, right? Like the fact that he was able to unite poor white people and poor Black people together in a common cause scared the people in power. And because they keep us separate, right? There needs I keep going about capitalism because I feel like I'm on a soapbox all the time, but capitalism,
it's impossible not to.
Yeah, because it needs somebody to lose, right? And if you can convince these other people that they make $30,000 a year and less than $15 an hour, that they should defend Elon Musk on social media because of why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you convince these people to do that, you're winning, right? Elon Musk is winning. Every time somebody comes on there and is like, you don't work as hard as he, or Elon Musk is a good, or whatever they say about Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, any of those billionaires, Jay-Z, any of the billionaires, right? They come on there and defend these billionaires. They are doing the work of predatory capitalism in this sense. And they need to keep us, keep us separate because as soon as everybody gets together, this is what America doesn't have. Like European countries have social solidarity in that sense. They are nationalists, very much so. But if you are French, you vote for the things that French people get. If you are German, they have that social solidarity. They keep us from having that by using race.
So we have to break it out.
But to your point, race is a thing, a manifestation of capitalism in a sense that even races itself is just basically denominations in complexion, like the system of colorism. The more white adjacent you are, the higher the denomination. Then, the darker you are, the lower the denomination. It's like the difference between a dollar bill and $100 bill. And that denomination increases the more white adjacent that you are. So we have that system of colorism that steps in line. And we've seen that happen plenty of times. And then we get into the conversation about colorism and people say, oh, it works both ways. No, let's not kid ourselves here.